Let's take a look at your BMW cards that you guys submitted. I think before I start with the individual comments, just some comments overall I had for everyone. Um, One, there was a lot of questions about images being pixelated, and I think largely um, it's just a preview thing that InDesign does with sort of smaller files, like 1 or 2 page files. It's not really that big of a deal. Sometimes you can go into preview mode where you can hit overprint preview under view, and that changes it a little bit. I believe these are unlinked. Yeah, I didn't update links, so that's also why that they're still pixelated. Most of these, unless you scale the images really big, they should be fine. They may pixelate a little bit for the purposes of this assignment. It's not really that big of a deal. Sorry, I'm just changing my 3 months back. So as far as those go, don't worry too much about it. If those couple of settings don't, the preview and the overprint preview, and also making sure that your images are linked. I just didn't relink them just because I didn't feel like it, to be honest. Um, the other thing is making sure that we're not distorting our photos when we're resizing. Either use the scale tool, which should be under your transform tool, either using your scale tool, or if you're using your mouse effectively here, if you're using your mouse, make sure that you're holding shift so that you don't essentially squish or distort the images, right? All right, so let's take a look at Zinnia's. So we have one. I'll preview them very quickly. And then there's the second. I think overall, these both look pretty good. They're great starts. I have a couple of suggestions for both of them. For this one, I like that you have the border here. Um, for this, we'll remember that these are kind of like really large cards. So I might make this a little bit smaller. I know I'm going to hit the wrong button doing this. Yep. Uh, let's get my modifier keys out here. There we go. I'm holding Shift, Alt, and Option to resize the frame and what's inside the frame, the content, and Shift to hold my proportions. Anyway, I might kind of tuck this in the top rightish corner, or even try the bottom. If you want to put a background behind there, you could. You could either go with like, let's grab our ellipse. And I'm going to start from the center here, holding Shift, using this as my guide here to go behind that. If you wanted to kind of do a more, sorry, I'm talking and doing at the same time, it never works out. So we'll go with paper, and then I'm going to turn down the opacity a bit. It's not necessarily the way we would do it. Just to give it a little bit of a background, maybe play around with your opacity slightly just to, give it a little bit of offset there. You might even use, oops, you might even use black. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. There we go. Have a black background there. Um, Obviously, I need to arrange this, so I'm going to send this backward, and I'm going to keep going. I'm using my modifier here. I'm going to keep going. There we go. Okay. So now if we have that, there we go. So you could even use a black background on this one. But I would try a white or a black, see which one you like better. Play around with opacity if that's something that you would like to do. If we drop down, oops, helps if I pick the right thing. Let me undo. There we go. So go back to white. And then if you wanted to play around with the opacity, if that was something that you liked, find that sort of sweet spot. Or just go with a white or a black background. But yeah, I might tuck that either top or bottom right. Definitely make it a little bit smaller. And then I might make this image a bit smaller. Try to find your go shift and kind of like eyeballing it here. I might make it a bit smaller just to kind of like let the image sort of breathe a little bit. And then I might swap these size and location. Even if you had, you know, your headline up here and made it this size, and then have your car down here and then make it smaller, essentially to sort of give this image a little bit of room. You could even kind of move it up and to the left a little bit, but definitely kind of swap sizes for sure of these. You know, you could even tuck if you had this a bit smaller here, so it's, you know, give or take about this size, down here, and then you can have your headline a little bit bigger. You might need to edit it a little bit, so you could have like going green doesn't mean giving up style, something like that, to edit it, to shorten it up a little bit, tighten it. But I think overall, depending on what you do there, I think you have some room to sort of free up this car a little bit. But overall, I think it's a awesome start. And let's take a look at this one. Again, sort of similar things. I would say for this one, if you had the room, you have a little bit of room, because you are cropping your image a bit. Sorry, I'm like talking and resizing at the same time. Same kind of thing. I might make this a little bit smaller, maybe even move it up a little bit, just so you have a little bit of room. And again, I would kind of swap, you know, swap these kind of headlines, and watch your spelling as well. I believe there's a U in there, an extra U. But I might have, you know, beautifully unique up top here, and then smaller, again, like kind of like this size, swap sizes. You might even be able to go with white without the black outline. Let's try and see. Okay, you do have a stroke, okay. Or align your stroke to the outside if you can. Oh, no, it doesn't let you. Center, oh, it is to the outside. Okay, never mind. Let's see what it looks like with a bigger, oops, I'm selecting the wrong thing. Well, that's way too big. And then you can kind of play with that meter limit so you don't get those sharp shapes. That might be a little much, but I think if you just went with all white and bold down here, you know, have your car model here, and then have your headline over here and much larger. Again, sort of swap these styles, and then that kind of frees up this. And again, you could do like a similar thing if you had the logo up here or even down in this corner, and potentially put a background, a round background to it instead of the square background. But just kind of see where that sort of fits visually, or what you like that visually. But I think either corner you can go with. But again, I would make this a little bit smaller. Again, kind of swap styles here, and then play around with the logo and maybe a round background to it. But I think overall, an excellent start with both of these. All right, go to Elizabeth's here. Kind of look at both of them. Close that. A little bit. Okay. And that one. Okay, so first thing, we'll take a look at this one. First thing I want to check actually is our document setup, because the margins look a little big. Let's see. I believe, I need to look really quick. I believe that we were supposed to have those an 1/8 inch rather than a 1/4 inch. Not a huge deal, but I just wanted to double check. Yeah, the bleed is an 1/8 inch bleed and the margin is 1/4. I thought that bleed looked a little bit big, but not a huge deal. It actually gives you more room. But you can change that in your, again, in your document setup here. And then change that bleed to 125. Let's lock those in and hit OK. There we go. So you can see that bleed just moved in a little bit, but it gives you room. So if you wanted to, speaking of the bleed, if you want this print to go to the edge, then you're going to need to adjust your image a bit, and you have the room to do it. So again, I'm holding down Shift, Alt. I'm just going to go make sure I give myself plenty of room. Top and bottom. Okay, let's see. Here's the edge. Let's see the edge of your. Oh, there's the edge of your image. Okay, so I'm just going to make your image just slightly bigger, or you can move it up, which might also be an option to make sure that that's in the free space there. But you want to make sure that that image goes to the edge there, all the way to your bleed, so that way you don't get anything cut off, right? For this one, I don't mind the headline and the color. I would simplify your text a little bit. Definitely make it smaller. This is pretty large, and if you wanted to try to fit it in this black space here that they've sort of created for you, but I would definitely simplify that text. It's a little bit rough for BMW. Go with something more bolder. If you wanted to go with something a little bit with a little bit of personality, that's fine. But I would sort of stick to cleaner, bolder fonts. But if you made this maybe one line a lot smaller, that would sort of free up. I'm going to say the opposite for this one. I might make, here, let's see, let's pretend this is all in one line. We'll go here, give or take. I'm just kind of quickly doing this here. I'm going to make this a bit smaller. Oh, there's a return there. Oh yeah. All right. Oh, it's still hyphenating. Anyway, you're getting the general idea. Wow, that's way big. So yeah, again, if you went with a cleaner font too, that might give you a little bit more room. I was trying to think of how to reorganize that headline a little bit. It's a little bit clunky and that it kind of doesn't read super well. I get the idea, but I'll get back to that part of it. I'm going to put this on 2 lines just to, again, so to give you the general idea. There we go. So let's say there, and then for this, I'm going to say the opposite and definitely make this a little bit, so I had the thing, a little bit bigger. Why am I not selecting everything? There we go. I might make that a little bit bigger, even if you kind of wanted to sneak it in that space, right? And then you want to make sure that you don't have any color. You have a white stroke on this box there. I would not have those strokes there. There's one on I think there was another one, maybe one on the text box. No. But yeah, I would make sure that you don't have any strokes on your frames. And then sort of lastly, I would fit the model number. You could do it a little bit smaller. Don't forget the model number that we're selling there as well. But I think definitely resizing this a little bit, going with a cleaner, bolder font, resizing your logo, and adding the model name down here would work well. Again, just make sure that you're going all the way to that bleed if you wanted to have your color go directly to the edge. And then let's look at the second one. Oh, this is what I was thinking with the stroke. So this one again, I'd remove that stroke. You don't want the stroke on the image there or the frame. I think that's a good location for this. I think, let's see how much room you have. You don't have a ton of room with this photo. Again, you want to make sure that your frame and image, if you want to have it go edge to edge, you're going to want to resize that a little bit, at least to the bleed. You can go a little bit over. I am going to resize this slightly. So one of the suggestions I have here, if you have the room, you have a little bit of room. I would make this a bit smaller. So it's a good image to use, but I would make that a bit smaller just so it's directly to the edge of your bleeds there. And then this kind of frees up a little bit of space. Again, if you wanted to have, your headline-ish down here, I like the font choice you have here. I think I like the idea of what you're saying here, and I think if we simplify it a little bit, I'm trying to think of a different way to have that message. You could have like, I don't know, something like intelligence on the road, or sorry, excellence on the road, and hmm, no, I'm blanking. We'll figure it out though. But I was thinking like excellent, excel on the road. No, I'm trying to because it's a little bit repetitive, right? Excellent on the road, intelligent, safety on the road. Something to tie those together. But anyway, I think if you had one here maybe, and then the other here to kind of like bookend them, and then you could have like the model number up in here, or if you wanted to have your logo over here and then have the model number here. You might need to put a background on this a little bit, but I would play around with that, and then definitely play around with that headline. And I'll show you the kind of look I'm talking about, and paste. So without editing your headline as much, and I might go with a white font, just to have it stick out a little bit more, um, like visually pop out. Oops, sorry, just edited your text by accident. So you get the sort of general idea again with reformatting this headline. So, um, I'm wondering if like you could have like, I don't know, some kind of sale-ish. We'll figure it out. But anyway, you sort of get the idea of the look, right? And then again, maybe it's a little bit heavy. You could probably even go smaller with the text, and then have, the model number there, something like that. But again, it's going to depend on which you go with. I think either one. Again, a lot of these, either one could be great. All right, let's check out Natalie's next. And then, so I'll zoom in a little. So we have this one to check out. And then this one to check out. Again, I think some sort of minor-ish technical tweaks. Let's see this one. Again, you want to adjust. Okay. So you want to adjust this one. And again, I'm holding Shift, Command, Option, A to hold my proportions. The command is to size from all sides, and the option is to resize my frame and my image at the same time. Again, you want to just make sure you're hitting that bleed. I might move this over to the right a little bit just to give yourself a little bit of room. Um, I might make this a little bit smaller. Do you have another? Oh, no, you don't. I just did the wrong thing. All right, here we go. So I'm doing the same kind of thing, Shift Command Alt or Option as I hit the wrong button. Okay. Why is this not working right? There we go. All right. I think you could get away with having this a little bit smaller and just kind of like tucking it in that corner, maybe a little bit bigger than that, but you get the general idea. Just to kind of free it up a little bit. Um, I might have this. I might go with a bolder font. Um, or see if you have, let's see, book. Oh, it's just one size. Okay. Yeah, I might go with a little bit of a cleaner font there, but I might have this on the bottom here, and then change your color. Oops, I want my swatches, text, fill, paper. There we go. Have that white effectively. Um, and then I like the idea again, sort of this editing in the headline. I like the idea of your headline. Add some speed. Um, I don't want to clutter it up, but I feel like that's a bit fragmented. So I'm thinking like add some speed to your day or add something like that. I think it's a little bit um I don't know. I think it's too little in this case. But I think having your headline here works well. And then having your logo here and your model number, that can go probably a little bit smaller too. And you can go with maybe a cleaner font, maybe a bolder, cleaner font for both of these. Um, Generally, if you're going to show like a cut like this, um, you would want to have a full image like of the car, like a full shot of the car. In this case, I think theoretically you could probably add it to the back. Generally, I would say kind of lean away from this, like use this as like a detail shot or something like that. Um, but I kind of like the idea and I like the layout that you have. I don't want to clutter it up with like a detailed car shot kind of thing. Um, we could, in theory, we could potentially add these to like the other side of the car or something like have a fuller car shot there. So I think visually, I think this works well. I think conceptually, if this was kind of real world, there would be a couple changes there. Again, I think sort of similar to this one or to the other one, um, I might get rid of this graphic there, and then maybe tuck your logo here, maybe even go a little bit bigger than that. You could even potentially, you might have to put a background on it, but potentially put your logo up here. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. And then I might have your headline a bit smaller. Um, and again, a little bit more bold, um, but give or take in that spot maybe. And then have your active hybrid X6 either. I keep doing the wrong thing there. Definitely white. Um, and I would have it either here. I don't mind it tucked in over here or even sort of tucked in over there. I think having the location of the logo, if you had the logo here, obviously you wouldn't put the model number there. Um, or if you were to do that, again, I would go much smaller, more clean. You could do something like that. You know, maybe try those out a little bit. And then sort of lastly, again, you want to make sure that we are hitting that bleed, right? Make sure you're hitting that bleed with your image and your frame. So I'm just going to resize that a little bit just so we definitely hit that bleed. It doesn't affect your image too much, which is good. You have a little bit of room to play there. You could even tweak that down a touch. Um, so that it hits the bottom there. But you get the general idea. So I think some resizing and some playing around and kind of just like visually cleaning this one up, I think would work. Either one, again, I think for a lot of these, both options I think work really well with some tweaks and some playing around. All right, let's go to Madison's. There we go. Put the swatches away. So we have this one, a bit of a different look than we've seen, which I like. And then this one, I feel like you're still working on this one, but um, let's start with this one. So this one I really like the layout of. I think um, some sort of minor tweaks, I guess, to this one. Like I would take out the BMW since we sort of technically know it's coming from BMW. Um, I might break this up a little bit. I have it center justified. You can center, this is within the frame. So if you had like a line top, you can kind of see a line bottom, a line center, etc. So I just align that to the center. Um, I might I might see, you might need to make these a little bit smaller. Um, yeah, I think if you make your text a bit smaller, that would work. So I would at least, oh, I hate it when it hyphenates. Where's my paragraph? Oh, where is it? I don't want properties. Type in tables. There we go. Paragraph. It's always buried in InDesign. I always forget where it is. Why isn't it showing me? Right. That is not what I want at all. I want to get rid of hyphenating, and it should be within our paragraph there. Anyway, here's paragraph. Let's see. Shading border hyphenate. There it is. There we go. I personally hate when it does hyphenating. So yeah, so you might need to tweak this a little bit. I would get rid of the BMW there. Looks like we got an extra space there. We have a couple extra spaces. So yeah, we can watch that. I wonder if we force a break. And then again, you can make these a little bit. No, I don't like that. Anyway, again, you'll find that sort of that sweet spot. I don't necessarily like that either. Um, I was thinking of even putting a space in here, or maybe even putting this in its own frame and justifying it so you don't have a full line return or just your line spacing. But I think just kind of tightening this up visually a little bit. I don't know about left justifying the active hybrid X6 and then center justifying this, but I might play around with this block of text. It was a little bit blocky to begin with. That was the whole point of what I was doing there. And then this I would make definitely smaller, seeing if you could fit. I like the idea that you have there. Again, you can kind of center justify this instead of putting in returns. That kind of gets tricky. What is it like? 14, 14, 14. Okay, that should all be, but when I select it, okay, there we go. So you can probably go to like a 12 point. And what I might do is try to get these on one line. And then I do kind of like your messaging that you have here. I would cut that, and then you can center justify. There we go. I kind of like that idea. I would just clean this up a little bit just so it's, so you don't have those awkward returns with the ampersands there. Again, just sort of like tightening this up a little bit, tightening this up a little bit. And then somewhat lastly, we want to make sure that we're not squishing. It looks like all of these are a little bit distorted. So we want to make sure that we're keeping our proportions, right? I like the idea of what you have here with the three different shots and then this one detail. I might sort of, it's going to be kind of tricky, but I might switch that and have the larger image be one of the car shots. If you're going to use the blue ones, I would say either one of these two. So you have, sort of more of a main car shot here. And then you can have a detail, like even if you had a car here and then the, not the dashboard, but the shifter here, center, and then you had the other car, so you can kind of bookend the images. But I would have more of a main shot here. But yeah, I think cleaning this up, making sure your proportions are accurate, and then swapping the car picks around a little bit, just to sort of give a bigger image of the main shot there. And then this one, I like the idea of this one, to be honest. I might make, I'm not sure what that image is. I was looking at your links. It looks like you have screenshots in there. I'm not sure why, but we can talk about that in class. So you have that one. Okay, let's go to that link. That's not, I didn't want to relink it. I wanted to go to the link. There it is. Go to links. Okay, so that is what it is. All right. So I might make this image. I'm assuming that you put that clipping mask on it, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. We're not supposed to be altering the photos, but that's not altering it too much. So is what I'm doing here, I might make that a little bit bigger. Obviously, I'll have to tweak and play around with it just to, size it appropriately. I would definitely go smaller here. Move that text down a little bit, give yourself some room to play around there. And then on this one, I would actually swap locations. Again, make this much smaller. And then I would swap locations, or try it at least. Maybe even swap the way this one faces. I know the logo will be backwards. That's something that you could always fix. But I think sort of finding that sort of sweet spot there with the image and your text, I think sort of would give it a little bit of, room to play. I might make this, what is this one? So let's go 30. And then we'll go 30 here as well. Okay. I might get rid of that text entirely. Oh. Even if another idea, as I'm sort of doing this, on the fly here, I might even play around with making that text black. Okay. Getting rid of that. Taking the logo. Because you definitely don't want to cut. That was going to be what I was going to say next, but move that to the front. This may or may not work, but you get this sort of general idea. And then kind of make this a little bit bigger so you see the full logo, and then maybe kind of tuck that in the corner there. I don't know. But you'll find that sort of like sweet spot in, even if you wanted to carry that across the bottom, I'll just kind of play around. But this is one where I think if we play around a little bit with it, depending on where you want to have the car there. Even if you had, I was trying to see if you had that across 3/4, how that would look. But anyway, kind of splitting that difference, I guess, if that makes sense. But I like what you have. I like the idea of what you have going on, but I think, tweaking it, freeing up some space. Sometimes a lot of free space does does a lot of good instead of having things so crowded and on top of each other, right? Especially with such a bigger print. But yeah, I think some tweaking with either one of these would work. Nice. All right. Let's go to Kimberly's here. All right, they're both in one. All right. So there's one. And then here's the other one. Okay. So I think for this one, let me see. So if you were to have a black background, right, going to the edge, depending on where, okay, that looks pretty good. I was going to say where your trim is. The trim is going to be here, right? Make sure it's set up. Yeah. Well, no, our bleed is 125, I believe. Oh, I only did it for the top. Anyway, um, I might, it looks like it's your margin and your bleed is a little bit large, but what I might do is with your image, oh, I see you have that on top. Oh, okay. That works. That's a stroke. Gotcha. I might align it to, okay, it is to the center. Um, mm, we can play around with this, but I was thinking of increasing your margin a little bit so it's in between um, the bleed, or rather in between the trim and the safe zone, right? Um, so adjusting that stroke rather, so the black margin is a little bit more even, right? So unless you wanted it that way, so in this case you would have like a really thin, potentially a really thin black margin, right, around your image, which I think could work as well. Okay, so I'm gonna have that. I'm gonna lock. That's I did an Illustrator shortcut. Lock. There we go. So now we have your image. So now you have a little bit of room to play around with your image. I would make this a bit bigger. Um, let's, oops. So if I select the actual image, so I would make that a bit bigger, right? And it may pixelate a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about that for the purposes of this assignment. Um, and then again, kind of play around, find that sweet spot with the car there. And what I might do with these, I like this graphic. What I might do is bring them up and down a bit, respectively, give or take. So they're about, give or take, so they're about the same. Um, and I might honestly go a little bit bolder, maybe a little bit bigger with this one, and then go a little bit smaller with this one. But my sort of last-ish suggestion with this one is, um, well, I guess it would end in the same spot. Never mind. I was trying to think of that bleed. I might have this bleed all the way to the edge, depending on how it's going to, in theory, print. You can look at the print preview and see, but I might have that go all the way to the edge. Go to preview just to see. Yeah, I mean that's not too bad actually. So it just depends on. I would try it with that on top going all the way to the edge, but I don't mind that small margin as well. But yeah, I would kind of tweak these up, down respectively, and then lastly, um, I would see if I could. There we go. I might even just get rid of that entirely because now you have sort of a darker background for your logo, and even just sort of like leave it there, or if you wanted to throw it in the upper, depending on where our safety is, but our upper right hand corner, I had to think about that before I said it. Uh, and let's go back to screen mode, normal. There we go. Just to kind of make sure we're in that safe, which we still have plenty of room, even if you nudge it right up to the edge there. But yeah, decide which side you want that. But yeah, I would sort of again make this a little bit bigger, make this a bit smaller, maybe even sort of swap styles there, maybe make that bold. Um, yeah, and then sort of tweak these up, down, and then make this a little bit bigger, and then decide sort of where you want that logo. But I think that could work really nicely. And then we have this one, and then I would say sort of like a similar thing with this. Um, I kind of like what is it long? I just like, okay, gotta lock that. I like that idea of having, depending on where you're going to put it, um, having that sort of go off the edge like the first one. And then this, I might go bolder, maybe slightly bigger with this one. And then maybe either leave that there or try white text if we went smaller and bolder there. And then sort of lastly, this is similar, oops, similar to what we were talking about with your other one. I might get rid of that and either just have the logo on the bottom there or the logo on the top. Trees get a little bit tricky with logos. One thing you might be able to do instead of having that square behind it, if you wanted to start with your, uh, why am I blanking? Your circle, um, your ellipse. And I'm starting from the center out, so I'm holding Shift and Option. And I'm just going to go to the edge there, and I'm going to move this back. There we go. So now, oops, we don't want to do that. So now you sort of have that round background. And you can either leave it white, black, play with transparency a little bit. But now you kind of see, group those. Now you can kind of see you have a little bit of space to play around. I might move these up a little bit, but find those sort of like sweet spots. And then lastly, with this one, you don't have a ton of room with your car. I was going to say to potentially go a little bit smaller, but you don't have a ton of room with that. Just to sort of give it a little bit more free space, even if you wanted to bring this down slightly. If a tire gets a little bit cut, that's not that big a deal, but just sort of free up that top space a little bit. Even if you kind of eyeballed this, give or take, so they're kind of visually balanced, right? Even if you wanted to play with this, um, with that look, right? But yeah, I think either one with sort of those tweaks would definitely work. All right, let's check out Tobias. So we have one, and then there's the second one. Okay. Let's actually back out just a little bit. All right, so we have this one on preview mode. Oh, we don't. Where are? I was looking at where your guides are. So for this one, I didn't notice that before when I opened it. I'm going to go to our document setup. You need to make sure that the document is, oh, you have your bleeds. Okay. Why am I not seeing? Oh, are they hidden? There we go. Show guides. There we go. And then our extras, that's why. So we turned off some of our, anyway, looks like we just turned off some of our extras there that kind of help hide lock. Okay. All right. Yeah, if you wanted to sort of see what it looks like quickly without hiding stuff, you could just go to screen mode preview, and that'll effectively do the same thing without having to go back in and show all of your stuff. Okay, so for this one, I like the idea of what you have. We might need to, let me unlock. Oh, are your layers locked? Let's see how this is built yet. Okay. So yeah, so for this one, you don't have a ton of room with bleed there. I was going to see if you could move it over to the right a little bit, but we don't have a whole lot of room to do that. Even if we move it down a bit, just so it's right up against that safety, give or take, right? You could potentially make this logo a little bit smaller, as I just did the wrong shortcut. Here, make that a tiny bit smaller, sort of tuck it in that corner there. And that's about an inch by an inch. I might turn these. I like the idea of what you have here. I like this sort of honeycomb graphic that you have. What I might do is play around with location of these, even if you had, these give or take right by your safety, right? And I just clicked down and over 5 clicks. I might have these in the upper left here. And again, we need to make sure that um, we're not squishing these. And what you can do is, what I like to do is fill frame, and then we can zoom in. I'll just do this one. And now you can kind of find that like sweet spot with where you want this. And if you are going to resize, you just want to make sure that you're holding shift, right? And then we'll kind of bring that down to the edge a little bit. So you kind of find those sweet spots, but these are definitely distorted. This one may not be, but I would just double check, make sure you're not distorting your images. And then what I might do is either swap spaces for those. Why didn't that work? Oops, I keep hitting the wrong thing. Shift and Option. Let's make this a bit smaller. I might convert this text to outlines just so you don't have to go messing around with text. But anyway, I might play around with sort of having an overlap there. If you kind of wanted to sort of line it up so these work well together, give yourself similar spacing, something like that. Or even if you wanted to do it down here, just to sort of, well, now it's on top of the car, so maybe not so much. I might make that smaller. But play around with sort of like, you have this interesting visual with the honeycomb there. I think you could kind of get away with playing around with your X6 a little bit. Again, maybe make that a little bit smaller. And then that way you can have your headline a bit larger and maybe on one line. And maybe clean it up a little bit, or reword it. A vehicle that has climbed its mountains. I didn't want to add to it, but I don't know. We'll figure something out with that. A vehicle that has climbed this is sometimes the hardest part of it. What I might do is lighten this a little bit, maybe play around with the opacity. Just to, where is our opacity for text? This is another reason why I might just switch it to, anyway, not switch it, but convert it to outline so that you can play around with that. Oh, there it is. Or opacity a little bit. Again, you don't want to ghost it out too much, but maybe even like 50%, find that visual that you like so you can still kind of see it, but it's a little bit more subtle, right? And then I would place maybe about this size, but small, the full, the active hybrid X6 here. You could go a bit smaller, like 12-point font down on the bottom there. And if your headline was maybe one line, and here for the headline, I might tighten up that drop shadow a little bit or not put one in at all. We'll have to see if it'll need it visually. But let's preview it and I'll show you what it looks like. There we go, the finish. Give or take. Again, adjusting that headline, adding the model number real small underneath, I think could work really well for this one. And then let's take a look at normal. Let's take a look at your second one. Oh, I was thinking it was on the same document. It's not. So for this one, I kind of like the idea of what you have here. I think these images are tricky to use for something like this. If you wanted to try to use those still, yeah, it's going to be hard. You don't really have the room top to bottom. My idea was potentially to have like this car effectively down at the bottom, and then this car effectively at the top, but you don't really have a ton of room to play there. Just to show more of the full vehicle. Or I would just use one image. Um, it's not exactly that visual that you were looking for. Um, but I might just do one image. And then this way, where is, I'm trying to select these without, here we go. Now, you could still have sort of like the same kind of sentiment, and we're going to have to show all of our things again, but you get this sort of general idea. I think, yeah, there's our bleed. So again, you kind of want to go directly to the edge there. So now we know we're at our bleed. I'm going to show frame edges. I'm going to show that. There we go. So now we can see our guides. All right. So now we have the top and the bottom of the bleed there. This image is a bit tricky to work with, as you can see. If there's potentially a way that you can work this idea, but showing sort of two different car cuts. Again, I like the idea of visually what you have. Again, I feel sort of bad taking this one apart, but if you had this, I might, would a beamer for your summer evenings, switch those around a little bit. And then you could have, your model here. I would make the active, remember to properly identify. So it's the, um, now I have to look, the active hybrid X6. So the active hybrid X6 down in the bottom right here, and then maybe have your, you have this be white. Again, sort of decrease the drop shadow. It's a bit visually distracting. Either tighten it up or get rid of it altogether. But you could make your headline a bit bigger, um, even 3/4 or 2/3 across the top. And then I might even suggest putting your logo in the corner here. Um, again, find that sort of sweet spot with the car image and your logo there. So it frees up some space with the text and with the logo there. But yeah, I might sort of clean this up a little bit. I like the idea that you had as I tore apart your file, sorry. I like the idea that you had conceptually. It's just kind of tricky when you have, oops. It's just kind of tricky when you have, these sort of two quarter shots. Even if you can, these images are tricky to use. Um, but even if you found two other images that work, I'm guessing you probably have that headline in there because of this and these sort of light flashes that you have there. Even if you potentially tried letterboxing with like a black border at the top and a black border at the bottom, if you wanted to try to continue to do this look, I don't mind it. I might have this go a little bit higher. And then again, sort of clean up your headline a little bit, make sure the model number is correct. And then you could even have the logo. I mean, I would definitely make this logo smaller for sure. I'm hitting the wrong thing. There we go. Okay, let's make sure. As I'm hitting the wrong modifiers. Why doesn't it like my modifier? There we go. Okay. There we go. All right. You could even make this a bit smaller. The problem is going to be sort of finding a spot for that logo. I might even go down to a full 1 inch by 1 inch, but that's going to be kind of the problem with using this double image like that. Even if you had it, that might be a little bit clunky, but if you put a white background behind that, I don't know if that's something that you would like to do. It still might kind of look a little bit clunky, but I don't know, let's send this back a little bit. Maybe make that white. and then play around with the opacity of that white a little bit just to give it a little bit of transparency. If you wanted to do something like that, the tricky part, again, the tricky part for this is going to be kind of that, you really are only going to see like a quarter of the car here, and then you kind of get 3/4. I think if you potentially, were able to move this shot, even if you move this over a bunch more, but you're going to get rid of your sort of reflective glare you had there. Um, but yeah, if you kind of, again, I kind of wanted to line them up. I know they're different angles, but play around with the size and sort of line them up a little bit, even if you had sort of similar shots, right? That's why I was kind of suggesting having a black border top and bottom, maybe, if you kind of wanted to continue that sort of center thing. It gets a little bit tricky, again, to find that sweet spot um, where the text is readable. That's where maybe getting rid of that drop shadow would happen. Or I would go with one image. But yeah, so a few different options for you on these two designs. All right, and then let's check out Mina's. There's one. And there is two. There we go. All right. So both decent layouts. I think they're potentially a little bit cluttered. So I feel like for this, you could definitely make this a bit smaller. Oops, it doesn't like that. A bit smaller. And then let's see how much room we don't have a ton of room for that image. But yeah, maybe make that a little bit smaller. Again, maybe kind of put a background on this guy, make that a little bit smaller, just sort of visually free up some space a little bit. I might play around with the idea of, where's our safety? There it is. Even tucking this kind of right in that corner. I might play around with the idea of overlapping these a bit, even if you went with full opacity for the active hybrid, kind of make a graphic out of it. I think I kind of like that look of what you have. But I think kind of like play around with the size and location of these. Um, you have this kind of cool sort of graphic almost happening already. And then I might try for this one, see what white text will look like. Probably, yeah, not so much. But yeah, I might go with a little bit of a bolder font here. You don't want condensed. It's not too bad. Even if you put a copy behind it and put a stroke on it just to thicken it up a little bit. But I think overall, I think it's a good design. I think for this one, I think it's kind of like tweaking locations of these and just kind of making things a bit smaller. There we go. Making things a bit smaller just to kind of free up the space a little bit around the car there, and then playing around, maybe make that a little bit more sort of graphic looking. But I think I really like the idea of this one. It's going to be, again, sort of just finding the sweet spots with this, maybe moving some things around. Um, I think putting this up here might clutter it a bit too much. Yeah, that's definitely not going to work because it's going to be right on top of the car there. But anyway, since you don't have a ton of room to play around with the vehicle shot, um, I think it's going to be kind of finding that sweet spot, maybe making all of these like 90%, shrinking it by 10, 20%, just to kind of give it a little bit of room around the car, just to sort of free it up visually a little. And then this one, I really like the idea of this one, although we've kind of seen it with one of the examples. Again, for this, I would make sure that we're not cutting off the car there. Even if you just make it a little bit smaller. I like your headline. I would change the graphic a little bit just because this graphic was in one of the samples, one of the student samples. I like the idea of the graphic. Again, I might see if we can do something a little bit different with it. Definitely make it a little bit smaller. I think it's sort of a similar visual issue with your first one. If we make both of those a bit smaller, even like 20%-ish, just to see, again, sort of um, give it that, I don't know, that visual space to breathe a little bit. I like the active hybrid X6 there. And then your images, um, I would make the BMW image a bit smaller, just to sort of so you're not cutting off that logo. Um, let me see, let's go to screen mode preview. Um, I don't mind the white stroke. I might see what it looks like without the strokes on them. Um, Although you might want it, but let's see. Hmm, maybe that's not too bad actually. If you're going to leave the stroke on those, you just want to make sure that everything, oh, too far, that everything lines up evenly, right? So let's make sure that those centers are indeed centered, so that way you don't have that little gap there that we just saw. Um, and then maybe sort of tighten these up a little bit so that I'm not gonna go crazy with it, but tighten those a little bit. That's not too bad actually, just 2 clicks. So it looks like your margins are a little bit even. And then you can kind of group these three and center them. But yeah, I would decide if you want the stroke on there or not. I don't know. It's entirely up to you. I kind of like the idea of having these three as well. My other suggestion was going to be potentially getting rid of that, but I don't think it was going to work. Oops. I want shift, select, and then bring those to the top. I was going to potentially suggest having this one come off there and then even, kind of splitting the difference here. And then again, we'll come up with sort of a different graphic, but just to sort of show you, oops, there we go. If we were to kind of do that, maybe was an idea I had potentially. Again, maybe do something a little bit different with that. Oops, we don't want to search stuff. Um, that was another idea I potentially had. Um, even if you wanted to bring these down a little bit, sort of give yourself the same sort of visual there. Even if you wanted to separate those a bit. I don't know, just an idea. I do like the three images. I was just kind of thinking of an idea to have, you have this one going off to the left and then this one going out to the right. That's one of those ones you may or may not like. Maybe even swapping out this car cut a little bit, but I would play around with those couple of ideas there, and then again, maybe doing something a little bit different with this graphic. But I think overall, both designs could be really good. All right, and now let's go to Derek's. So we have this one, and then we have that one. All right. So both of these I feel like are good ideas. I'm going to go back to normal mode here. There we go. I like the white outline that you have. It's nice and clean. I would kind of go bigger with this. And if you wanted to have it go across the bottom, that would be, oops, that would be good. But I would definitely I would lowercase that. Where luxury meets smart performance. I like that. You don't need to do this look anymore. I know it was in some of the samples earlier, but that's kind of an old, I mentioned that when I was showing them real quick, but that's an old sort of, oops, exactly what, okay. Let's look and see how your file was built there. Um, Lock that so I don't accidentally select it. There we go. So you don't need to have the boxes. Unfortunately, I do like how you recreated these, and unfortunately, I'm getting rid of all of them. I'm gonna keep that one actually. There we go. So for this, I might sort of do the opposite of what we've been doing. Um, oops, and let's lock that too. I might. Oops. Oh, did I lock the logo? Let's see. I sure did. Uh, is that in like a giant frame or is it just me? Oh, it is. Okay, it looks like this is in a massive frame. Um, so I would maybe move this to the upper left. Um, and then, okay, let's lock this now. Okay, I would watch your frame sizes too, because that frame is huge. But yeah, I might move that to the upper left. And then again, for these, well, I'll say that last. I might have your active hybrid X6 a bit bigger, um, definitely bigger than that. But let's play around here a little bit. So if you had your active hybrid X6 there, and then let's make it at least 14 point, and then we'll make it white. Oh, no, I don't want it. I want stroke on it. I want a fill. That's what I want. And make that white paper. Maybe even a little bit bigger there, but you have some room to play with there. Even if you had it in the top. But yeah, that's going to be tricky to fit that. So I would have your headline here at the bottom and definitely bigger, bolder. And then your active hybrid X6, and you kind of play around with the location of the logo. Lastly, what I was going to say, I'm going to unlock everything. Let's go to our car image. Again, you want to make sure that you're not stretching your, okay, good. All right. Make sure we're doing proportionally so that way you're not stretching. That didn't stretch it too bad, but it definitely stretched. If I noticed it, a quote unquote client is going to notice it as well. I was trying to see how much room you had to play around with, either moving that up or down depending on how much you would want that to be. But anyway, I would play around with where luxury meets performance, even if you wanted to have that logo in the bottom there, and then have your headline up top. It's a little bit tricky with white, which is why I think I would have the logo there. If you wanted to put a circular background behind it too, that might that might work as well. Or even try the location over here with a background, maybe, maybe not so much. Even if we had our active hybrid, I'm selecting the wrong thing. If we had the text here for your model number, give or take there, and then you could have your logo down here. Oops, as I just messed all that up. You could have your logo down. What am I doing? Unlock all. There we go. You could have your logo potentially down here, even give or take. You might have to put a background on it again. But I would play around with sort of freeing up that space a little bit visually with this one. All right, and then let's take a look at your second one. Again, we want to make sure that we are not stretching our photos. This one might be distorted. These two look okay, but again, I would say sort of similar things with this one. And again, unfortunately, we can kind of get rid of that one, get rid of that one. Oops, not that. Get rid of that. Oh, not the whole thing there. Okay. What we could do is take the color off of that frame. What's behind it? Why is there? I would use the round logo. I'm not sure what logo this is, to be honest. Let me see our links here. Oh, it's a different logo. That's why I had the PNG for transparency. Okay. So yeah, I would have the round logo. using that PNG, and then you can either use it transparent or put a background, round background behind it. But I would kind of say that similar things for this one. Um, I might do upper left with that. Driven by innovation. I might put this on another line, just so it's, you got to think of kind of like how it visually looks, but also how it reads. So like driven by innovation, effortless power, unmatched luxury. And then you kind of either need to decide what you're going to do with your punctuation there, right? Because you have title case aside from the by, which is fine to not capitalize that. Um, but if you're going to use punctuation, I would do commas there and a comma there, and then a period there. Sometimes with title case, punctuation is a little bit clunky. I might play around with having this all on one line, right? Maybe. Or potentially having them on 3 lines. Uh, oh, I don't. Anyway, take off hyphenation, blah, blah, blah. So you'll see this unmatched, and then you can kind of get rid of the punctuation if you want to completely because it fits with your title case. And then even if you played around with your line spacing here, oh, where's our paragraph? Um, that's indent. Let's play around with our line spacing, maybe somewhere in here. Anyway, you get the general idea. Um, Separate these a little bit. I always forget in InDesign where where our line spacing is. But let's open up. I'm so used to Illustrator. See now, why isn't it showing me? It's so weird. My InDesign is freaking out, and I don't know why. Anyway, oops. I would play around with your line spacing, not what I'm doing here, because this is going to be way too much. But play around with the idea of even having it on 3 lines. So see if you want to have it, and I would tighten that up. But see if you want those on 3 lines or one line across the top, and then you could have, your active hybrids, make that definitely bigger at the bottom here. And then I was trying to see, oh, okay. I was trying to see where there we go. I would bring that to the edge here so that we have a stroke because you didn't have the stroke on the left side, right? So it looks like you have, okay, I see what you did there. So yeah, I would nudge that over a little bit just so you don't have that gap there, right? So now you have your stroke around all 4 sides there. And then I would sort of match that stroke as well. Let's do black, right? So you have a stroke on everything there. And I like kind of how you have these indented a bit so they're not, oops, I missed. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. Like I like how you have it um, indented isn't the right word, but you get the idea. How you have these kind of, they're not aligned top and bottom. That's a little bit static. You have a little bit of movement there. Um, I like that idea. But yeah, I would play around with your headline a little bit here, play around with the placement and potentially background color of your logo, depending on what you're going to do with your text, might free up some space either here, here, or here, and then definitely make that active hybrid X6 a bit bigger for sure. But yeah, again, I think either one of these with some minor tweaks could be great. All right, and then Nathaniel's. Here we go. There is, and then this one took me a minute because I didn't realize. I thought you just had one here. Let me go to my layers here. We have 2 different layers. Okay, so let's look at this one first. So I think here I'm going to do view preview so we can just see. There we go. So I kind of like the idea that you have going on here. I think for both of these, really, it's going to take a bunch of cleaning up, right? Maybe even losing one of these images. I would say that one if we were going to lose them because you have the blue on both of these, right? And I would kind of, how I said before, I would swap these, maybe move these to the right, right? And then swap that just slightly, swap these two, and then obviously space them out. And then I would make these a little bit bigger just so that way you see more of the car. Oops, I hit the wrong thing. There we go. Just so you see more of the car. I would definitely make those bigger on this one for sure. And that might give you some room to play around with this a little bit smaller here. I would just have active hybrid X6. Trying to see why that did that, but I would just have the active hybrid X6. Maybe make that a little bit. Oops. I don't know why. I would definitely clean up your frames a bit. There we go. So I don't know why that's flipping out on me. It looks like your frame is rather large there. But yeah, I would definitely clean up your frames for sure. And then you could even have this down at the bottom. And then depending on what you did with this image, we want to make sure that it is, I'm trying to just select, I have a lot going on here. Okay. I feel like I just broke something in your file. There we go. So if you want to have that edge there, this is going to be kind of tricky. I'm trying to find that spot to like get this more over here without messing around with our photo too much. Or I might move this one over to the left and then having your headline-ish here, maybe. Definitely one line. Definitely maybe making it smaller. Oh, as I messed up your frame there, but you get kind of the general idea. For this one, I think there's going to be a lot of cleaning up. There we go. Cleaning up your frames in general, but also, and that's pretty big. You probably even go down to like 32 point. Even if you kind of, well, it's going to be a little bit tricky, but I took away your right side there. So, splitting the difference here. And again, I would clean up your frames a bit. But if you had, your logo, give or take up here, and then you had your text here, give or take. Maybe even choosing a different car cut or adjusting your, actually, that wouldn't be too bad. Adjusting your image, a little bit. It's going to be sort of finding that sweet spot again with where the car sits. And then if we make that black. So, not magenta. One drive at a time. I don't think that that's too bad. Again, we're going to kind of, where's the edge of our frame here? There we go. I wanted to try to, there we go. So now we have it, give or take. Again, you'll find that sort of sweet spot with the image at these three images. You could probably even make these a little bit smaller, especially if you're going to make this and this car cut a little bit bigger. You could probably get away with making these all, a tiny bit smaller. Let's see if that'll actually work. Nope, it doesn't. Anyway, there we go. Maybe not that small, as I just messed it up and hold shift, but give or take, even if you swapped the location of these and then had your text be on the other side. Oh, there's that extra one there. That's right. Forgot that extra one. So let's move these over here. We kind of get the idea. We'll get rid of that one. And then you could have like the model identifier, give or take, at the bottom here. And again, kind of play around with the logo placement, even if you wanted to have this now over here, give or take. And then we might need to play around with the font color, but again, you sort of get the idea. Yeah, maybe even putting a drop shadow behind it. So I just copied, and then I'm going to paste in place. And then this is kind of like what we did with that magazine. Let's go to black, and then I'm going to send it backwards. There we go. And then now we can kind of throw a little drop shadow, and that sort of gives it a little bit of readability. But anyway, obviously tightening it up a little bit, but I would sort of rearrange these, maybe drop one of those photos, make those photos a little bit smaller, but kind of play around with the idea of giving yourself some room to breathe there. And then let's take a look at your other side here. There we go. Okay. So this one, I like the idea of what you have here. I think for this one, it's going to be, I might try to see if you can break this up a bit. Normal screen mode. I might try to break this up a little bit and see if you could have like sort of one headline kind of in each corner, if that makes sense. I'm trying to think. Statement on wheels, maximizing style. I was trying to think of how you could have, a statement on wheels here, and then like maximizing style. I don't know if you want to say maximizing again, but maximizing performance or maximizing style and performance might be a little bit clunky, but even if you had this smaller on one line going across the top, and then I would have this on one line, maybe going across the bottom, and if you had it on like, let's do, you'd have to go a bit smaller for sure. Yeah, it might be a little too small. A statement on wheels. I wonder even if you had this, cut that, and then you'd have to play around with your text a little bit, your text color, maybe even like the drop shadow there. I'm just kind of moving things around a little bit. And then, okay, maximizing style and performance. I might see if you would maybe even have it there. My idea was to have it sort of split the difference so that you have, oops, oops, okay, shift. I wanted to kind of have it go across the center line here on both sides. So if you had, and again, you could kind of decide if you want punctuation in there or not. You don't really need the comma there, just to kind of clean it up a little bit. But yeah, even if you want, I was trying to see if there was a way to sort of do that kind of bookend thing. And then I was going to see, you don't have a whole lot of image to play with there, but I was going to kind of see about resizing these images a little bit. Even if you had it here-ish, and you could kind of think about these in like their own sort of little sections, if that makes sense. Not that you want to clutter this up a bit, but kind of like with each section here, find that sweet spot of where you want the car image there. Give or take, you'd have them a little bit different size, but this gives you a little bit more kind of wiggle room to play around with there. And then I might, oh, no, that's not gonna work. You could even give or take, play around with the location, but I would kind of think of these as 4 different sections, but also like how you're thinking of them as a whole. But again, finding that sort of what you want to play around with your frame there too. So the frame edge is here. But yeah, and then it's just kind of fitting the BMW Active Hybrid X6. Even if you had it small here, and then the BMW logo, don't forget the BMW logo there. Give or take, I think there's definitely some possibilities here with this one. It's just a little bit text heavy, and you just need to sort of rearrange that text a little bit. I'll go way back to your original so that way you can see. I could just revert, but now I'm committed. Okay, there we go. So you can kind of see how you don't really want to cover the product that much. So I think it's just going to be kind of, if you choose this one, it's going to be sort of rearranging that style that you have there, and rearranging the text, and don't forget the logo as well, but rearranging that text just to sort of not cover the product, but also make it flow a little bit more visually. But yeah, I think overall, good work, everybody, and I look forward to seeing your revisions.